Trying to hide, random Minnesota, give the guy a soda. Just trying to live his life while you gotta talk smack. They didn't do it, no. Come to your senses, everything is just foolish. Things clearly showed that it was just a joke.
You guys are asking the white people about Beyonce right now. Okay.
What?
Let's do this.
Wait now.
Just a lying shame.
How's that race shaming? No, I don't want anyone to get attention off a big thing if they're not talented. He's just right. You're the one that's just doing it for the dollar or whatever, the likes.
Make sure you...
Yeah.
Katie, make
He's
sure
doing
you
it for the likes.
Do it for the dollar.
Whatever you say.
Right.
Whatever that thing you said.
I'm gonna make a shirt that says that.
Anthony just got
Doing it
so
for the
mad.
dollar.
All right.
Oh
So,
my god, I can't.
Should we just go?
I guess.
Here we are. Make sure you guys lean in.
Oh.
Here we are.
Doing it
It's
for the
episode 2 of making a podcast.
Yeah.
Yes.
Took a long break.
The fame got to us.
Yeah,
Really.
that was what it
We're
was.
just doing it for the dollar.
We're doing it for the dollar.
Screw you,
As
Katie.
Anthony would say, doing it for the dollar,
Doing it
which
for
I
the
actually
dollar.
kind of like. It's probably more appropriate than the likes because the likes really are all about the dollar.
We should start that hashtag.
They aren't
not gonna
always,
lie.
Are you laughing so hard you're crying?
Yeah, that was too
Doing
much.
it for the dollar.
Wow.
Um,
This episode brought to you by caffeine.
yeah, caffeine and #trending.com. I'm Dave.
I'm Anthony.
I'm Jen.
Katie.
That was so sweet. That was like we just did that. It was great.
Boo.
So a lot of stuff has happened since our last episode to the point that things were happening and I was like really upset that we couldn't just talk about them immediately. So we're probably going to just go at it and see as much as we have. But the first thing and the biggest thing in the news, and I guess it's not super murder mystery, but it's definitely like crime related, is the not reaction to the Beyonce Formation song / Super Bowl / Black Panther / everything that happened, including the SNL
Oh yeah,
crazy skit
that was
that just came out.
that
was
reaction was
hilarious
really,
and that
really
everyone
fun.
was
It was
really
great.
enjoying.
Yeah.
So, what do we all think? Because we have a different perspective because we're all in the media in some form or another. So we're seeing that spin off,
And we're diverse.
and then we're diverse, and then
we're
we're seeing the
diverse.
pop culture one. So I feel like, as a black woman, we toss to you first. Katie.
Okay.
Tell us a little bit about
Katie is half black for the record.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Let the record show.
for the Formation video,
Yeah.
and then I feel like I have a really interesting super white person take, and then we can figure it out.
Okay.
Would you say it's privileged?
Wow,
Answer.
you're glaring at me right now. They can't see that you're glaring at me, but he says
I
the
said
word
it.
white and privilege in
I
the
just-
same
I don't
think
sentence,
that was a
and you get
glare.
mad
I
at
just
me.
said the word privilege, but go
Okay.
ahead, Katie.
I don't know if that was
It's
a glare,
okay.
but
It wasn't
okay.
a glare, but like Katie.
Yeah. So when this video dropped, I was real excited. I thought it was so good. I love the song in the video.
Oh, yeah.
My biggest problem here is that there's a lot of, and I'm going to get really candid here, so if anyone gets offended by this, sorry, you're lost.
Damn.
There's a lot of people on my social media pages who are like your typical privileged rich white girl who are posting about this video like it just ruined everything they knew about life. And they're the kind of girls who would be out in the club listening to Beyonce days before this, and then this video drops, and now they're like, death to Beyonce. I can't believe she's talking about our police like that. Oh my God. And my thing is, her video is much less anti-police than people are trying to make it. I think that her whole point is that, you know, there's a problem and it's affecting her community, and she obviously has given money to the Black Lives Matter thing, and I'm sure she's passionate about that. But even with that, I don't think it's very anti-police. I think it's more there's a lack of judgment going on between the police and these, you know, colored communities, and there's been so many cases of police using poor judgment and turning to violence and just shooting before they think. And I think Beyonce and all of these, you know, black entertainers who have spoken out on this, I think they're more trying to call attention to that. And Beyonce, you know, all these white people are mad that she got a police escort, but she's Beyonce. How many people are going to go and like try to grab at her? That's like a personal safety issue. I don't think she's saying all police are bad. I don't think she's saying all police, you know, are trying to kill us. And I don't think she's saying we should kill the police or like do things to them, whatever. I think it's more there's some kind of lack of judgment going on, and it's creating this sense of violence in a community that she's directly linked to. And so, again, she's an entertainer. It's her job to be radical. We just lost David Bowie, who, in his own right, was very much a radical entertainer, and that was fine. So why is it such a big freaking deal that Beyonce is speaking out for her community and being radical? I don't get why that's so offensive to people.
I think you should talk about how we were talking about artists and how this music generation is kind of like pigeonholed to not be able to express themselves. And you want to elaborate what you're saying?
So I think that when you look at something like this, it is a really interesting take on how artists have evolved, because what Beyonce is doing with this song, to me, isn't really that police oriented at all. I think that people are just taking it that way on its total surface level.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But so this is, to me, what I saw a lot of, because I had to listen and look at the song and do a lot of stuff with it this last week.
Yeah, it sucked.
Well, at first, at first I didn't really even like the song. And I still don't like the beginning of the song, but in the middle, I felt myself kind of grooving a little bit. I was like, But in general, it's not like my favorite song that she's ever done.
Okay.
But what I think has sort of happened, and we talked about what artists are, and we're kind of in a weird generation for artists. In one of the most amazing things is that they can immediately expose their art to mass amounts of people, which is incredible, and that's like a huge benefit. One of the difficult things is they're so famed and revered and praised that sometimes the ideal role of what used to be an artist, to shine a light on other people and society and the issues, good or bad, that are happening, has sort of become artists shining a light on themselves and their struggle as an artist or their successes as an artist. Mm-hmm. And so what happens is, when we're in 2016 and the light shines on the artist himself or herself, and then they move it back to the issues, at times, if it's a sensitive issue, that can be a really difficult thing. But when I look at it like historically, it makes a little bit more sense to me. First off, I thought the Beyonce song was basically saying like, hey, I might have come a long way to the point where like I'm very New York and I'm very LA and I'm a businesswoman and I have all this money and my husband is popular. But I still understand the struggle of what it is like for a regular black person in the South and like the things that you have to deal with. Mm-hmm. It was sort of, and you might laugh at this, but it was like Beyonce's version of Jenny from the Block for me. Like it literally was. That. Like I used to have a little, now I have a lot, but I still know where I came from. Like the whole thing, like about how like the Bama, New Orleans, and like you could feel it. And to me, the whole music video, which if you've seen that and not the halftime show, it's about like,
which was garbage.
I didn't like the halftime show, but it's about the images. It's about the images of her, of the cultural upbringing of a black person from the South and of people from the South. Mm-hmm. I didn't think the cop car was so negative. It was just like, look it, this is Katrina, and that shot was really cool. And like, this is some of the struggle that we've had, and like this community, I still understand your struggle, even though I don't deal with it day to day. I can still relate and sympathize and everything. And she shined a light on what that sort of struggle was and said like, I still am that person. I still understand that person. I still know what you guys are dealing with. And the whole like imagery of like the slaves versus like the mistress and like all of that sort of imagery that she used was just explaining that she knew the history of what was going on in that area. Right. But to me, it was kind of cool because I remember when the Beatles became, well, obviously I don't remember, but I've looked up a ton about how like the career of the Beatles, and once they became
famous,
they became really famous, their music became edgier because they had so many eyeballs and so much attention,
and they were on lots of drugs,
and that too. But they had so much money that at that point, when you have that many eyeballs, you almost, at times it seems like some artists feel a moral obligation to do something with their platform to talk about some of the issues because they know their security is still there. And like Beyonce has so successful and so incredibly revered as an artist that she doesn't have to be super concerned about whether or not something is going to go over all positively. She has a platform for eyeballs.
To be devil's advocate, do you genuinely think, and this is an open question, that she did it? Because we're talking about like Kanye and like all these people who do it for like the dollar. Where, like, do you think... I mean, like, I don't want to sound cynical, but I think to an extent... I mean, not to say that it's not an issue, because obviously, like, there's a ton of cases that we report on even at work. But, like, I feel like part of it could be to try and generate, like, a conversation. And maybe,
Definitely.
like, maybe the half bowl
that.
thing, or halftime at the Super Bowl. Apparently, like, I didn't even know that was an issue, and they were like, that was the Black Panther thing. I was like, oh.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well,
I didn't even know.
I was kind of shocked about that too, and I get what you're saying. And like we talked about, she is a businesswoman, so I'm sure that was like part of it.
Yeah.
But I also, kind of like Dave was saying, I don't think if she didn't care about it, I don't think she would have done it.
It would
Beyonce's
be
kind of a
easier
private.
to write about something else.
She's kind of
Yeah.
a private person as
Right.
well. Her and Jay-Z both. And so
Yeah.
I think if they didn't care about this cause, then it just wouldn't have happened at all.
I think she
You
knew
know?
exactly what she was doing.
Yeah, and at
Yeah.
the last, and what's so funny to me that, people are so up in arms about it and posting it and making, these statements. The last line of that song is, you're that bitch when you cause all this conversation. So the second she wrote that down, she knew this was going to happen.
Yeah.
And so, I don't know, if I was one of the people who wanted to be so offended by this and wanted to join that, like, offended movement, then I think I would listen to that last line and kind of think, oh, maybe I shouldn't say anything because, then I'm
Yeah.
giving in to her. But I don't know. Apparently, they don't care.
I mean, that's why she wrote the song, because she
Yeah.
knows that there's this problem that's unfortunately plaguing, like, the Black community and the police community
It's really
don't
just
have
cops.
a good relationship right now. So it's a problem. So for her to, like, she's obviously passionate about it. So for her to ignore it would have been easy, I guess.
yeah.
So it's like she's using, like Dave said, her platform and her fame, and like a lot of people look up to her, and she's a Black woman who's successful, but she also didn't start off in that position. She's come up in the world, obviously. She's Beyonce. But for people could easily be offended, but also they could easily understand where she's coming from if they wanted to look at it in like a what is the word? I can't think.
Like,
Race division.
Like an
big
open
picture.
look at the big picture.
Yeah.
Like, be more open-minded. Like, of course, like, people are like, oh, she's what, like, people like Tommy, what did they say? Like, she was like trying to spark, tension or spark whatever with like
White
police.
domination.
But
And
that's the
it's-
thing, though, is when you have a platform like that as an artist, if you truly want to be an artist in the previous sense of like what an artist was when people were doing it without the idea that they were going to get famous, and I know that's like
NWA.
things are different and whatever, but if you were really doing it, it's like once you have some type of platform to make the choice to shine it on something that's uncomfortable but maybe you feel obligated needs to be discussed, is kind of a higher form of art than just being like, I have a lot of money and look how
Right.
awesome I'm doing. But the irony of this to me is it sort of feels like a lot of people are making it sound like this is the first time that any artist has ever come out with like
no, that's
something that
crazy.
sort of is sparking the division between cops and not cops, and it's
Yeah.
so untrue and so strange, and
Yeah.
maybe it is just because it's like a powerful Black woman on TV in the biggest spectated event. But
In
I was
America.
liking it when I was looking it up to the song "For Dead in Ohio" by Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young. Are you familiar? So you
Nope.
and so well,
no.
if you listen to it, and I can like play a small clip of it, but basically, in Ohio, in like the Vietnam War protesting era, a bunch of college kids, like white college kids, were protesting the Vietnam War, and the
Everyone
National
was.
Guard was sent in by the federal government, and like an incident happened, and 4 unarmed white college kids were killed.
Okay.
And Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young wrote this awesome and well-revered song that was basically like, can you believe that this is what's happening? We're almost at a strange point against our government, and how many more people need to die before we see this ridiculous divide between the military style of this National Guard, literally the military, and our people, because we're expressing our view that's against what our government is doing. And it became like a semi-rallying song behind like the negative relationship between the military and the federal government and the people who were protesting the war at that time. And a lot of those people now are in the age bracket of the older white concerned Super Bowl viewer who is so nervous that Beyonce is saying negative things about the cops or whatever, or talking about that racial divide and that divide between black culture and police authority. But the thing is, like, that song was revered because it was the commentary that everyone wanted to say, but no one had the platform to say, and then these guys wrote an awesome song about it. And it's sort of, to me, almost strange that you can't look at it without race and just see that it's an artist who knows the struggle of certain people and is just trying to reflect that expressively to draw attention to it.
Yeah.
And I thought that song was such the epitome of the people that are now criticizing it that I couldn't believe that there wasn't more empathy for the fact that she's trying to do it. I guess the only way that is defensible is if you think she's only doing it for the likes and the dollars. If you think like, oh, she thinks this is going to spark controversy and attention. But there's so many more easy, lowbrow ways to do it than creating something that is much more, you're touching a nerve that's much more difficult to roll with. And even last night at the Grammys, when she presented her award, she walked out and was like, an artist is the type of person who sheds light on a cultural issue, even if it's difficult.
Right.
And even if not everyone's going to like it. And she did it really quickly and really subtly.
Yeah.
But you could totally tell what she was saying. Like, unapologetic.
Absolutely.
I have no regrets for the fact that I chose to bring light to this issue.
I like how low-key she's been since she dropped that. And, you know, last night she didn't even show up on the red carpet. She just showed up to present that award. And, you know, I think that's her kind of trying to be like, no, I'm really not trying to...
I'm not going to apologize. I'm not going to comment.
Yeah,
it is what it is.
Exactly.
That's it.
I think that's her kind of trying to be like, I'm not really here to do it for the likes. Like, it was something I wanted to say.
It's fun. It's weird that, like, I didn't even see a problem with it or even care. Because it's like, I don't know why people have to even talk about it or bring it up. Because, like, it doesn't even affect you. Like, first off, like, you're like a white person being like, oh, you're trying to cause this division. It's like, you're not even black. So first off, you'll never know what you have to go to.
The division's already there.
Yeah.
She's just pointing to it again.
And then people,
you know,
to be like, you have stupid people like Tommy who, like, go on their own platform and just say some, like, heinous shit about stuff they don't know. She's like, the Black Panthers are violent. And you're just like, if you just do, like, a little research, it's like they only got violent when violence was put upon them.
Yeah.
And, like, that's a big point because, like, you know, they're not going around just, like, killing white people like it was a thing to do.
And I get that. I get why we're referencing Tommy a lot because she's, like, someone who's been very in our face. But I just feel like she's
Tommy
a very...
Well, she went viral.
Yeah,
it went viral.
I get it.
And
and that's the thing. I feel like she's such a bad example to use because we all know firsthand that girl is going to say and do anything
Doing it for
to,
the
to
dollars.
get the likes and the dollars. And that, you know, and that's kind of why I'm like, I'm kind of like,
once you have the likes and dollars, then you have a platform where you can be more selective about what you want to shed light on.
I get it, but like,
dangerous,
I don't know.
though.
To me, she's, I think she's a terrible human being. So I think I'm biased here, but yeah, I just think we need to stop. I think she's the kind of person we need to stop paying attention to and pointing out. You know,
I feel like the whole conversation, even like us talking about it, it's kind of sad because like. We're even then kind of continuing like this thought that some people have, and it's obviously wrong, but the majority of people, because it's like the internet culture where you can say shit behind the scenes and, you know, anonymously and be like, oh, I have a feeling this way, and then like when it gets out, it's like hard to bring it back where people
very true
just think this one way and they're like, you know what, she was trying to generate division between the cops, and you know what, she was trying to say that, you know, white people are doing things blah blah blah, and just like, I don't know.
Yeah,
I saw some quote recently and it was like, a sign of intelligence is having a thought in your head and not necessarily taking it as fact or agreeing with it.
Yeah.
And that's kind of how I feel like this. It's like, well, there's a conversation that's being sparked, and even if you don't think the conversation is warranted and like there's some negative attention to it, maybe you should just think about the fact that like other people have thought that the conversation was worth sparking, that maybe that should set off a light in your head that like, oh, maybe there is something to this that I'm not completely understanding. And it's not like she's sitting there and doing an NWA and being like, you know, fuck the police.
Yeah.
It's different. This is like,
Absolutely.
I understand the struggle you're going through.
Right.
And even though I have this platform, I'm going to try to use it to represent you.
yeah.
Anyway, I want to quickly just
should probably roll on.
Yeah, I want to play like 2 seconds of this song. So the Kent State Massacre happened in 1970, and I'm reading this now, but basically the Cambodia campaign was like Nixon was exiting Vietnam through Cambodia, so it was all part of the Vietnam War era process that was going on. And they were rallying against that at Kent State in Ohio, and the National Guard was called in, and they fired 67 rounds on unarmed students in 13 seconds, killing 4, wounding 9, and 1 got paralyzed. And so there's like a memorial there and stuff. And then in 1970, this song came out. So I want to play, it's called Ohio, but I want to play like a tiny bit of it. But to me, it's super relatable to what Beyonce's doing in like the 1970s like white folk musician version of it.
The entire, go ahead. Well, the entire 70s movement, Creedence Clearwater, Birds, I want to say the Animals, that could be wrong though, but like all that was about Vietnam. It was protesting. It was like reflecting like what's going on. Hell yeah. I'm right at home.
So it's just like, you can tell right off the bat. And the whole refrain is like, how many more, how many more? It's like, to me, the inability to see the relatableness between...
White and black?
Well, yeah, just what that was for like the 1970s white person protesting a war that they felt didn't represent them. And the 2016 black person discussing the relationship with police officers that they don't feel accurately represent them.
Yeah.
Like, even if you disagree and you think that the police do accurately represent them, you have to accept the fact that someone has decided to comment on whether or not they agree with that statement.
Well, and I think, so my last thought, I guess. The reason
thoughts?
why, my final
Oh,
thoughts.
please. They have to stop.
The
We have to stop the Tommy references. Please.
The reason I think white or black, regardless, people, there's also just that divide, like when, you know, the police force is being questioned about like their integrity is being questioned or whatever.
Yeah.
And that's like scary to society because they're, you know, police are the people you're supposed to count on to protect you when there's nobody else, you know, shit's hitting the fan, everything's going awry, and then all of a sudden it's like police are supposed to be there to take care of it. So when they're the ones causing problems per se, how else are you going to get attention and make those changes or get people to want to work to make those changes? And it's like stuff like this, you know, songs about it, because how else, like, are you going to bring enough attention to enough
It's like
people
songs,
to
comedy,
question
movies.
the right?
You have to do it in like a weird social setting
To
where
raise
it's okay.
the question. Like, unfortunately, it is awkward. Like, do you want to call out a police officer and be like, your integrity might not be intact right now? It's not that easy to do.
I get
it's
that.
hard.
We're in a weird place in
So
America
it's-
too, where like you said, we're supposed to trust the cops,
Right.
and like we want to. I mean, that's a natural thing to be like, they should protect us.
Yeah.
But in America specifically, like when a military man and the government says like their combat laws in the military, you cannot fire unless you've been fired upon. Like you can't even raise your weapon. But like cops are just like, neutralize the threat, blah blah blah. Like they immediately, because
why
it's like
is
it's just
that?
improperly trained.
like
really,
the
That's
way
my
they're
question. That's my
trained,
question.
yeah.
Like, why
Because there
is it
hasn't been
shoot before you think? Why
It's-
does that
I mean,
become the norm?
To be fair,
I don't
it's
get that.
obviously very stressful. Their life and their mind is on the line, and also, but it
I
has to go.
I
to,
understand.
It has to go to training. Like
I understand, but yeah, that's what I'm saying.
It's a
I think we need to
systematic
stop making
failure.
it.
Absolutely.
I think we need to stop
The other
stirring
thing-
up this fight and make it more like, let's look at how we can work together
Body
to fix
cams,
this.
but that's-
There's a training
Okay,
issue.
and so that's what
Yeah.
the role of an artist in a situation like this in its purest form would do.
Right.
Like,
Yeah.
how many more? Like, how many more situations? I mean, that's the whole refrain, but how many more situations like this have to happen before we realize there's a systematic flaw? And the shitty thing is, like, it must suck right now to be a good cop.
that's what I'm saying.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and
Because
there
if
are
you're a
great
good cop,
cops.
there's
There are
tons of
great
them.
cops. But
So if you're a great cop who does everything right and has been trained really well and, like, the minute, and I know it's like the same phrase, but it's like, you know, there's plenty of good gun owners, and like the couple crazy bad gun owners make everyone want to get rid of guns.
Right.
That's the argument of the person who is the good gun owner. And the argument of the good cop would be the same thing. Like the good cop who's doing the right thing and protecting people, protect and serve, and like civil obligation, they're not excited that people are like, that other cops are like planting evidence, and
I'm
other
sure.
cops are, I mean, it doesn't make them excited.
That's why body cams for everyone.
The same
It
thing.
protects
There
the good
needs to
and
be a happy medium.
shows the
Like
bad.
there's
Yeah.
always a happy medium, and I think
We should
we need
probably
to
go to the next
focus on
topic.
that. But yeah, we need to roll on.
All right. So
Roll
we're
on.
rolling past
Roll on.
Beyonce now that we got that out of the system. But I'm
Yeah.
excited to see how that evolves. So last time we talked, Sarah Koenig with Serial was going to make a very special announcement about how everything was going bi-weekly. And we were talking about what could she possibly announce that would make us feel okay with the fact that she's going bi-weekly. And Katie was not excited and didn't think anything could happen. And I was sort of confused because I didn't know what could happen. But
Yeah.
what happened is the trial of Adnan from season 1 started. So she had to go bi-weekly so that she could do work
Yeah.
with the season 1 trial. And I'm assuming, because you're a season 1 fangirl, that you
I know.
really...
I sound like the biggest douchebag now.
Yeah.
Because
There's nothing that Sarah Koenig can do to make it better.
Right?
And then all of a sudden season 1 comes out and you're like, oh my
Like,
god,
I'm
so
just
bad.
suddenly like all is forgiven. Thank you for doing this. And yeah, and I know I spoke too soon. Yeah. I'm
Shocker.
really happy that
Shocker.
she did that.
But what about season 2?
Season 2, I've just kind of given up on.
Yeah,
I'm not
me
gonna
too.
lie.
Me too.
Bored to tears. And
It's really lame.
but once I
I
saw
like
that season
season
1,
2.
you know, there was the 3 new episodes. Actually, one of our coworkers, he messaged me on Twitter like, new episodes of season 1, and I immediately like dropped everything and went and listened to that. So yeah, I'm sorry, Sarah Koenig, if you're listening for jumping the gun on that one.
All right,
But
so
thank
let's
you.
go season 1 first. So basically, Sarah Koenig is in Baltimore. They're reopening an appeal version of the case for Adnan. And the appeal version of the case is based on the fact that Adnan's original defense lawyer was very physically ill at the time, distracted, and basically didn't do the minimal requirements or the obligatory requirements of her job defending him because she didn't search enough leads. And there were something like 41 possible leads, and she only called 6 or 7 of them. That was some of the information they had. But the biggest one is...
There's 2 big ones.
There's 2 big ones,
Yeah.
but one of the biggest ones, the actual alibi lead, which really sparked this,
Yeah.
was Asia McClain, who is a girl that Adnan went to high school with, who says that she saw and knew that he was in the library, which is next to the school and essentially like essentially a part of the school campus almost, but it's next to the school. And she said that she saw him there after school and that she was certain of it and that she was waiting for her boyfriend to pick him up. And Adnan's original defense lawyer never investigated that lead. And so they want the trial to be reopened based on the fact that she didn't do a good enough job as a lawyer because she should have investigated this lead. And this lead is enough that it puts the trial verdict in a gray area that it should reopen the proceedings. So Sarah Koenig went there. There's been 3 serial episodes, about 3 days of this preliminary hearing. So the first one about Asia, let's talk a little bit about that. Basically, she talks about how she knows and the letters that she wrote to Adnan right after the event happened. How do you guys feel about her letters? Do you believe them? Do you not believe them? Do you think they make sense? Because the state is arguing that she wrote the letters being like, if you need me to explain where you were, I can do that, as in she wanted to help
Yeah.
him. And she's saying she wrote the letters because she heard from his family that he was having a hard time remembering the day and accounting for where he was at all times, and that she could offer that because she knew the truth and she knew where he was. What side of the fence are you starting to fall on? Anybody?
Okay, well, I have a lot of confidence in Asia McClain, and as far as Sarah Koenig said on those 3 podcasts, she was very confident on the stand and never wavered, even when they were asking her really tough questions. But something that did like put a little doubt in my mind, there was another student and friend of Adnan that they interviewed, and apparently he said something like way back when he said something to the police investigator along the lines of, "Oh, Adnan told a girl to write a letter and she got the address wrong. Type it up, and she got the address wrong." So that's kind of a red flag to me. But then you know, there's like many ways you could explain that. I don't know. I don't even think it's that wrong if he was asking people to, you know, people who had information to type up letters to,
as long as
to
he
give.
wasn't telling them what to say.
As long as he wasn't telling them what to say, I don't really think that's wrong. If
Right.
I'm trying to put myself in his position, and like I would probably do that as well. But I do see how that can kind of make something that it seemed really innocent before. I see how now that can kind of like taint that. So I don't know. I'm like kind of wishy-washy.
Yeah. At first I was kind of the same. I was like, oh, you know, they definitely need to get her back up there and talk about her letters and, you know, her testimony, I guess. But then the detail that did make me kind of second guess that was when they were saying that details that were included in her letter were too specific and like they were too, it was almost like she was writing after the fact and not before. Like the date and the facts didn't match. And that's always like the biggest shakeup I feel like in these kind of cases is like when the timeline doesn't match up. And when you're trying to like form a case around these facts that are so small but can be so big, then it's like, well, wait a minute. Like, how did she know? Like they were saying how she talked about the shallow grave and she talked about like very specific details.
But then the defense, they brought up newspaper articles from like before that date that was on the letter and like that date, and she was using the same terminology that were in those articles, which to me kind of like explained it.
Like
And
that
it totally-
But then I also see
yeah.
what you're saying.
It's kind
too.
of, yeah.
It totally makes sense to me though, because if you know this person or you think you saw them that day or there's a murder in your high school, you're going to read every single thing
True,
you can about it.
absolutely.
So if there was even a rumor of stuff about that had hit any type of newspaper or anywhere around the school or anything like that, you would start reciprocating that information. And
Yeah.
so I see it both
true.
ways. But if
Yeah.
there was any type of rumor in that way, I feel like it totally is reasonable that she would start reading all those articles and using that terminology and everything. It is a little weird that he was like, tell her to type up a letter.
Yeah.
And then
Like why? Yeah. That's
But
kinda-
that boy who said that, he wrote another letter after the state started saying that. He, you know, older now, he wrote another letter, and in that he's saying like, I never meant it the way that they're taking it.
The way
I
that
never,
they're
he was trying to say like, I
construing it.
never was trying to say that, or you know, try to make this discrepancy between what Asia's saying.
yeah, I think
So.
the craziest thing to me though is we're not saying whether or not we believe Asia 100%. The whole trial is whether or not Asia is enough that she should have been investigated by the defense and put into the trial. Whether she's enough that it could change the possible verdict.
That's a glaring red flag.
And so they brought in a defense lawyer, and the defense lawyer basically said that Asia was the perfect alibi witness that as a defense lawyer you would explore. And he referenced that case where he had, and someone was like, I was on a bus with this person, and he like never believed her, and he was like, well, how do you know? And she's like, it's my birthday. And then he like, it changed his entire case.
Right,
and
that's
she's
big
like,
enough.
she's the alibi you look for because she doesn't really like either Hay or she doesn't like Adnan. She knows
She's not
him, but
close
she's not
enough to
super.
either one of them to
Yeah,
be biased.
and then he's talking about how, which I hadn't thought of, that she wants to know if there's security footage, and she's saying that she has like she can call her boyfriend and like they can reference other people. Like she wants her thoughts to be vindicated. Right. Now, to me, that doesn't mean she's right, because maybe she thinks she's right so strongly, but she has the day messed up in her head, and she wants to know if she's right or not. And that could be the thing with the surveillance. Like, I believe this, but I wish there was a tape to prove that I knew what I was talking about. But either way, the fact that she's saying all that stuff means that she genuinely believes what she's saying. So I think that sort of negates the whole like faking a letter thing. Like she wouldn't fake a letter if she genuinely wanted there to be surveillance tape and to know, because she wants to know if she's right or not because she thinks she is. Yeah. And I think that is enough to like reopen stuff. But the problem is you might never be able to prove if she is right or not.
Is that, like you're saying, I don't think that's really the problem. I think the biggest problem is that Adnan's original lawyer, she didn't even go talk to Asia from what we can tell. And that's a huge problem. If you don't want to use her in the trial, I get it. But she didn't even go say
like you didn't even
what happened.
Go get like a statement from this person.
It looks like she didn't even call her. And Asia has said that. She never heard from a lawyer. So I think that is a huge frickin' problem.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh,
that seems. But you have to be able to prove it's enough of a problem that it could change the verdict. And then the last thing they talked about was the cell phone data.
Yeah.
Where they're saying that you can't use incoming calls for cell phone testimony. And they had two different experts. This is the stuff that I hate. So they had two experts, and they both said the exact opposite thing. Yeah. One guy was like, you can't use the incoming phone calls. The original investigator said he didn't know this was a thing, and he's saying he doesn't feel confident about his testimony. Incoming calls are sent through a different switch, so they can't correctly locate the phone. So he's saying you don't know, and only incoming phone calls are the phone calls that put the phone at the murder scene. Mm-hmm. So the defense is like, yay! And then the state is like, has a guy who says, well, actually, the way this process works is it's a huge switchover device, and it would only work if your phone was off and you were getting phone calls when your phone was off and it hadn't reestablished your location. Right. That the switch was still going through a previous switch from when your phone basically was last on.
So I have a question about that. So they're basically saying like, unless Adnan had been at Leakin Park with his phone off in a few hours before he was burying the body. Do you see what I'm saying? Like they're trying to say that he at some point in that day was there, but not at the time that the body was buried. That's what I'm confused about.
Well, Leakin Park was just like it was near, like in this huge area.
Right.
So
he could have been at school and his cell phone was pinging off the Leakin Park
towers and stuff like that. But the idea is that if you have your phone off or whatever, your phone's not getting reception and you go somewhere else, the signal could go to where your phone was last established for an incoming phone call before it gets sent to your phone. Okay. So if your phone is in airplane mode on an airplane and you get like an incoming call or text message, wherever it was last on fully functional would be where the tower would go.
Yeah, I get that, but
what the state is saying is like, well, his phone we know was on the whole time because he answered these phone calls. So because of that, we know that his phone was on and he should have been registering correctly. And that incoming phone call thing has to do with the switch, which is what decides what tower it goes to, and not the actual towers itself. And so that guy's saying, like, this clause is written specifically for only a certain reason, but it doesn't really apply in this situation. And the defense is saying, like, the clause is written, you have to listen to the clause.
And they are sure that he was answering those calls.
Yeah, the phone log has him, like, talking to people.
Yeah, there was, like, a log.
Yeah. Okay, well.
so it's hard to know though, because cell phone data, if you have two, that's the thing is you have two experts who are arguing different sides because they believe something different. Right. Then clearly there's still enough gray area, which again is all the defense wants, like Adnan's people want, is gray area, because with gray area they can reopen the trial. Yes. Because gray area means we didn't do this quite well enough, or this isn't clear enough that maybe there's an opportunity for this to be rehashed.
I feel like they're kind of missing a big thing they could use. If I was the defense, I would be saying, that was Jay the whole time. Wouldn't you? Okay. Wouldn't you be saying Jay was answering the phone calls?
Yeah. I mean, he did. I mean, yeah, that's huge.
I bet that's what they would say in the actual trial. Okay. But because this is just to try to re-bring it to court, they're just trying to show. They're just trying to muddy the waters of the cell towers. Okay. And then they said, like, even if this works, the state will appeal it. And it's going to be a long process. But it's kind of crazy that this has pushed enough. I mean, I'm interested in it. What did you think of the court case episodes? Were you intrigued? Were you back in?
I was very interested. And I'm, like, hoping there's a,
I think there'll be more.
I'm really hoping it goes to trial because I think this is something that needs to be re-looked at. Even if he is guilty, which I've said before, I wish he was innocent, but I'm not sure. I think it's obvious this needs to go to trial for a second time because there's so many.
Well, yeah, that's the whole point of our legal system. Yeah, you can't just like brush it off. You need to it needs to be a fair trial.
Yeah, so
Without this, it's not that fair. Even if he is guilty.
Yeah,
like you
I
said.
hope he does get a fair trial, and I hope that she continues to follow
So,
it and do the podcast on
Given
it.
the fact that this is the most listened to podcast ever, is it possible that he could get a fair trial? I mean, they'd have to find a jury who's
state-
I was
never
actually
heard
just
about
gonna
it.
ask
Yeah.
that because even with Making a Murderer, like assuming any of these get opened up, right? Is the public like too influenced one way? Like, how do you find?
You have to remember,
Not
too, this is
everyone.
this
I
is
have a
happening
solution.
in the county where the murder took place. And if you live in
They
that
should-
county, you're definitely listening to Serial because you know people are
Yeah.
like, this murder
Exactly,
happened in Lincoln Park,
exactly.
that's right next door. Listen to this shit, Katie. And you're like, I'm listening to this shit.
They should go up to Alaska and get a bunch of
Yeah.
citizens, because we all know that they're probably maybe one in like 100 people.
someone
listening
in
to
Sarah
the podcast.
Palin's on the
I mean, you don't have to
panel.
Oh my god, I forgot about her. The Palin family cannot be involved in
Yeah,
this at all.
I don't think you have to
But
go
we'll
to
just get a
Alaska.
bunch of like
just-
Eskimos.
no.
They'll not be listening.
You probably
They'll
don't
be,
need to go that far. You
I
could
mean,
probably
that's-
go
That's
like a couple
racist.
counties over and
Is that
just
racist?
interview. You could go a
Yes.
couple counties over, interview people, and be like, "Have you listened to
But
this podcast?"
I still feel
and
like-
get enough people that
Due,
saying
I
no.
think
Exactly.
due diligence is what we're asking for there, and
Yes.
I don't think that's too much to ask. I
No.
mean, yeah. I
From
don't know.
reasonable
could get a fair
people,
trial.
but
I
I
think
still
they
feel
could.
like if it's in the public, and I don't know.
Not
Public
everybody
opinion.
knows the details, though. Like, if you
That's
ask my
true.
mom, she'd
She
be
will
like,
have
what?
no idea. I
No.
think
True,
I think
true.
we're so millennial
Yes.
and media focused,
Yes.
you know, in our everyday lives that we forget there's people who like just don't give a damn
Yeah.
No.
about
Or,
the
like,
podcast.
maybe she
Well,
heard
trial
about
sitters
it,
tend to be
but-
older,
I don't.
too.
I mean, I haven't listened to season 1, but
Exactly.
But you know, you
I
are
feel like I'm-
influenced by
I
sitting
mean,
here.
I would still listen to the facts and everything because like I'm reasonable. But
Yeah,
I
but
feel
if,
like people
if
could
I'm
not
on
be
the
reasonable.
state side, I would sit here and be like, he's influenced because he was on a podcast where they talk about that. You know,
Yeah, that's
Well,
true.
trial sitters tend to be older people too, because they don't have maybe like jobs or other obligations that are preventing them from sitting through the trial. So it could be a group that's maybe not super into podcasting. I mean, podcasting.
I know my
is like,
grandparents don't know what a podcast
Yeah, well, podcast
is.
is like 35 and younger.
Yeah.
My parents don't.
Yeah.
Has social media ever been used like against someone in a trial and like saying like they were influenced one way or another? I don't know.
I don't know.
I don't know. This is something we're gonna need to look at going forward and like incorporate this into our legal
Yeah.
system because
Yeah.
it's just that's
It's
how
true.
It is,
I mean,
you know?
you could click on
Especially-
an article and think one way because someone writes some thing. You're like, this is legit, but it could be
Yeah,
crap.
especially because we're gonna be the older generation at some point, and
I
we're
will have
gonna
to serve jury duty. yes.
yeah, and
I've gotten
they're
out
gonna have-
every time I've tried to because they just don't pick me. But yeah, I mean, it's
Do
gonna
you
happen
sit there
eventually.
and like say crazy things?
No, I just the last time they didn't even call me in for an interview. That's the odds
Tight.
aren't with you. But I
Rolling.
still think even with season 1, there might be a little bit too much Sarah Koenig now. Like even her in part of those phone calls, her personality is like feels like so aggressive sometimes that
Yeah.
she is being a little too much of the present day artist and shining a little bit too much light on herself and not enough light on Adnan.
Well, we've had problems, you know, with her attitude.
Well, let's
Because she-
let's roll to season 2. Like you had problems with her attitude
Well, yeah,
all
because
of season 2.
she was so I don't know. She kind of was
I like it.
started off as like I'm a unbiased journalist kind of thing in season 1, and then all of a sudden she flipped the script and was like, I don't want anyone listening to my podcast, it's too famous now, and like mad that she was like mad that people were so involved, you know what I mean? And you can't control how popular your podcast is gonna get. Sorry, but I
Well, and
think
isn't that the point? You're putting it out
Yeah.
there to get people
I
to
think
listen.
And all these
that might have
articles
been a
she-
poor paraphrase.
I don't like
what do you mean?
I don't think she was saying I don't want people to listen to my.
Have you
podcast."
read these articles where she's talking about in multiple articles she was very like, you know, it's getting too many people involved and stuff like that.
I guess so.
I've not listened to season 1. Dave was telling me that it wasn't as produced, but I was catching up on season 2. I don't like the style of how like it feels like a storybook the way she
Yeah.
tells it. And I was like,
I agree.
I feel talked down to almost
Huh.
because like the way she presents it is like, this is what happened and like you should feel this way, and it's not. I don't feel like it's open ended.
So you
could just be the
listened to
topic.
the most recent serial episodes of season 2.
Yes.
And you stopped a
Yeah.
couple
It's
episodes
horrible.
ago.
But
You
I
bailed.
get what
And
he's
Jen,
saying
you
because
haven't
I felt
listened
like
to season 2.
I felt like
I
that
have.
too.
You have listened to
like
season 2.
halfway. Yeah.
Okay, so what do you think of the Bergdahl version of season 2?
I think it's kind of a lot of the times I'm like against him, and it's because of the people she has on there. So whether
That's true.
I don't know if that's like her intention. Obviously, she's trying to just bring light again to this case. But like even all the, the guys that she had, like the Army guys detailing, I like, it made me really annoyed at Bo.
Yeah.
Because I was like, God, like the more and more I hear, the more and more details, I'm just like, you are so dumb and you are so careless. But it's like, well, at the same time, like there was this like issue he was trying to bring to light. He was unhappy with the leadership. And so you go back to that and you're like, well, this poor kid, like, maybe he just didn't know how to like express these concerns. He did it the wrong way. But then I don't know.
That's the whole balance. Is it
Yeah.
malicious intent?
Right.
Or is it just like a dumb kid with genuine intent? Like, did he want to screw the Army over or did he not? Because either way, he clearly did something wrong running off the base. But you're trying to decide intent, which is super hard.
I feel like from the beginning, she decided that she was going to go easy on him or, like, felt too much sympathy for him. Do you know what I mean?
See, that's funny because I sort of disagree.
Yeah,
really?
I feel
maybe
like
maybe I haven't listened to enough of it. 'Cause I felt like she was not asking him or not being tough enough or, like, bringing... I feel like I didn't hear from enough people who were calling his story into question.
there's a few, if you go, I think it's maybe, like, starting up in like episode 4 or something
maybe
like
that's what I need to...
Like,
Well,
she
the
talks to
most
a lot
recent episode is the best, in my opinion.
I gotta listen to it.
It's always like a cliffhanger of like, but wait, and I'm just like, just fucking tell me. Like, it just, I feel like she could do everything in like 2 hours because it's just like, here's an expert. Oh, he took a picture, no armor. And then the guy was like, yeah, they're going to die in a combat zone. Like, why are they doing that?
And if anything, to be honest, I'm actually more interested, which is like terrible because the whole Taliban thing, how it's just like this whole network and how when she's giving details as to like how he got captured and how he got moved around and how they have their own network talking amongst themselves to like throw off the Army who's trying to find him.
So
that
fascinating.
I thought was more interesting.
What was
I thought
fascinating to me...
I'm just like, I don't care about Bo anymore.
I agree.
So that was fascinating to me was the Taliban's use of Pakistan and Afghanistan.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Was kind of
like
a
their
small.
little playlands.
It was like a small child who's playing tag and is safe on a base because the Army can do whatever in Afghanistan because they're in a war there, but Pakistan's a UN nation, so they can't do anything, and the Taliban knows that. So they just go to a section of Pakistan that is still their section that they're pretty much running, and they know that the Army can't touch them there, which is crazy to think that like the soldiers are so handicapped fighting this war because the UN drew a line around this area and said it's Pakistan. It literally like it's like a small child standing on a base being like, you can't catch me because I'm over here.
Yeah. But
the most recent episode, I just want to say like a couple things we found out about it because I think I'm really excited for what's happening next. And I'm in the minority here that I really like season 2 because for some reason it's just appealing to me. But this is what we found out. First off, we found out that Bergdahl actually like really tried hard to be a good soldier. He wasn't like a guy who was just like doing the minimum. They said that he was like awesome at physical training. He studied all the books beyond what his requirements were. He was super intense about being an awesome soldier. He wanted to be a soldier for hire after
Mercenary.
He wanted to be. He wanted to career it. Like, so he was trying really, really hard. They also said that he loved one of his, drill sergeants, one of his up-and-coming training commanders. He loved him. You've listened to this whole thing, right?
Yes.
And so what happened was he felt like none of the other leadership matched up to what that guy had been. And that was, like, his biggest thing was everyone who was leading him, he felt like sometimes 22-year-old people do, like he could do a better job of leading than the people who are leading him, and they're incompetent and all of these things. And he had this one really huge example. And so basically the example is an army tank, for lack of a better word, but it's essentially sort of like a tank, a big armored vehicle, gets blown up by an IED, and his team has to go get it because they can't leave it in the field because they don't want the Taliban to take it. And they have to get it, and they take it, and it's all destroyed, and they're, like, taking on fire or whatever. They have to get it and bring it to this really remote area where the Afghan police are. And they basically get stranded in this remote area for days, and they can't get out of the tank because the Afghan police hates them. They're afraid they're going to get shot at. And it's, like, a bunch of dudes who went on this mission to save a tank, and they're stranded there. And he's, like, so pissed that basically he feels like his leadership just left him stranded in a tank in this remote area with nothing to do. And he's in this tank, and they're being like, okay, fix the first machine that blew up. And the mechanic is like, you're crazy. I can't fix it. It's blown up. And they're like, well, figure out a way to fix it. And the mechanic is like, it's a tank that's blown up. I can't fix it.
No.
And they leave him there for like 5 or 6 days. And then eventually they're like, okay, just leave the tank with the people and we'll send someone else.
Was that the same time he was mad about not like going after them, and he like, there was that soundbite where he's like, I wanted to go shoot him, and like I wanted to
sort of.
Yeah.
So right after this, so then he's sitting there and he feels like the whole time was kind of wasted. So then they tell them to go down a different route, down. And the tank with all these guys in it, this is their first time in combat. And for like the first months they were there, they were literally handing out crayons and like building awareness. And they were all pissed because they're like, we don't want to fight the Taliban by like telling relatives of the Taliban, like, hey, you should support us. Here's a crayon map for your kids. They're pissed. So now they're in this and he feels like stranded, and they go down a separate way, and they basically run into a tripwire. The tank blows up. There's like 2 tanks, and they get ambushed by the Taliban. And they're like now so pissed because clearly the Taliban knew which direction they were coming down and had enough time to set stuff up. And they're in this ambush, and basically one of the gunner's guns jams, and like Bergdahl hands his gun to the gunner. They get in this huge firefight, and eventually like none of them miraculously get injured. A couple Taliban soldiers are killed, like 10 or a dozen or something like that. And they come back, and Bergdahl's like a little upset because he's like, I got in this firefight, and he like wants to be a soldier, and he's like, I didn't even get to shoot because like the gunner's gun jammed and I had to give my gun to someone else. So clearly he like
I don't like him
clearly he just like clearly he wants to be like
Here's the thing
guy.
that it sounds like. You join the army, which you
By
were
choice.
supposed to be a team. It's a choice. You're supposed to work together. And he just the entire time, by everything you just described, sounds like he wants to stand out. He wants to be the all-star.
Yeah.
He wants to be the leader. He wants to be the one that they're praising.
The Jason Bourne.
He's not
he
getting
said
that
he's
opportunity.
like, I wanted the movie version of the military,
Right.
like the adventure
But
and the action.
guess what?
And instead we're not getting
Tough.
it. And
Michael
then when
Bay
he
is
finally,
not there, sweetie. You're
and
not
then,
going to
but
get
then
that.
he's saying like, then when he finally got it, the way that it worked out, he didn't even get to shoot his weapon.
Right.
But
Fucking
this
war.
this is the part that really
Kind
frustrates him, and you can tell because remember, this is like a decade ago, and he was captured for like 5 years.
Huh?
He was captured for like 5 years. This is a decade ago, and he comes back after this like huge ordeal, being trapped in the tank, blown up, all the shooting, and he gets back, and his commanding officer is like, the first thing he says to them when they get back is like, you guys didn't even have the decency to shave your faces. Because they didn't know how long they were going out for, and they didn't bring like shaving.
You can't have
things.
like facial hair and stuff.
You can't have facial hair.
It's
in the
part of
army.
your. It's part of your.
And that's what
uniform.
he's saying.
Yeah,
He's like,
yeah.
we almost died. You sent us in a tank. We're sitting in the middle of nowhere getting blown up. We come back. We run into an
Probably
ambush.
way out of context though, dude. Like, okay, sorry. Go ahead, we're saved. Like,
This-
just fucking.
Oh, it's
relax.
hard
Sounds
for
like
us
a
to
lot
know
of
context.
whiny men.
Yeah, it does though, and that's why like hearing his story. The more I hear about it, the more I get mad, and I'm trying to be like, okay, I'm gonna hear what she's trying to say, but like, if you do a little research on like the 5 dudes that we traded, like. They're not good people. Like some of them were like tied to like selling missiles to like Pakistan and stuff.
bad.
And it's like that stuff makes me so mad because if you
Yeah.
think about what we America, we don't negotiate with terrorists, but like
America.
we sent like 5 of them, and it's just a really really bad.
Well, clearly we do, but originally people, like one woman who wanted to save him had to literally email and call
I
terrorists
saw that.
herself.
Yeah.
Oh,
To
yeah.
try to start the
is
negotiation
crazy.
because the government's
yeah.
so bad that no one was doing the responsibility of trying to find him, that she was like, every government agency thinks another one is doing it. Screw it. I'm just going to push every contact I have and try to do it myself.
Whoa,
But yeah.
wait, an American woman was doing that?
Yeah. You have to.
I forget who she
need
was,
to
but
listen.
yeah.
You should probably just listen. Yeah.
Yeah, but she asked the CIA to help or whatever.
And they said someone else was doing it, and somebody else said somebody else was doing it.
Right.
And
And
eventually
since-
she
since he
pushed
was
all
military,
the contacts and did everything
they
she
couldn't.
could. And she ended up calling and having phone calls and emailing and translating with someone to try to get him free.
It'd be different if like their base got attacked and he got kidnapped. Then it's like, all right, there's terms for negotiation where we need to be like, this is an American, he was just doing his job.
Yeah.
But in this case, he's like, I'm curious. The only reason I'm curious to listen is because I want to see if there's like a shining light of like, oh, like the CEO, commanding officer, like was like molesting them or something super crazy of like, okay, I'm on his side.
He hates his commanding
Yeah.
officers.
Yeah.
He thinks that they're like, all they care about is like uniform, and if they shave, and they're making things like they made this huge speech about like, I know you guys join the army to like rape, kill, pillage, and burn, which is like a famous phrase, like rape, kill, pillage, and burn, eat the babies. But the thing is, like, he's like, that's not what military is about, and blah blah blah. Yeah, that's like a.
It's like
phrase.
the whole gung ho.
It's
Eat
like
the babies?
It's the war. Of,
I've
you're in
never
war.
heard that term.
I know.
I'm not saying
Like,
it's
it's a
right.
bit
Anyway,
much.
it's just like it's more of a euphemism, and he was saying it as a
Okay.
joke, but Bergdahl like supposedly didn't get the humor. But
So-
the idea is like what we're trying to say is like, did he feel like his commanding officers were so bad that his only way to draw attention to it was to do this ridiculously insane thing, or was he just saying like, I hate the army now, screw the American army, screw everybody?
I don't
just
think
going
that
on
was.
my
His,
own."
I don't think
No.
that was his intent.
Really?
No,
I think he was
but-
just miffed, and he was like, gotta go. I think he was like, I don't want to sit here any longer. These people suck.
It's
I
just-
think he was being selfish, and he
Yeah.
wanted
I think so.
it to go his way, and it didn't, obviously. And then he sparked this whole thing. So it's like,
I'm sure once he got captured, and then all these people were looking for him and spending millions of dollars and all that, I think then he was like, shit, I better come back with a really freaking great reason for why I did this.
They
Do you
said
think
it's-
you think
He
that
tried
when
to,
you're
like,
do you
salvage
think you
it.
think that when you're kidnapped for 5 years?
Yeah, I feel bad for him. I do.
I
Because
think you
I
eventually
do
get to
too.
a
That
point where
sucks.
I think you get to eventually, because he says at points he's like, I don't feel bad for any soldier who just didn't want to come after me, who hated me, who felt like I was doing all these things wrong. He's like, I understand. I was captured, and instead of doing what you were supposed to do militarily, you were looking for me. Basically, I would be pissed too. I don't hold you in any, like, I'm not upset about anyone who thinks that they're pissed, which makes sense. 'cause
That's
you ran
reasonable.
off.
Yeah.
But I'm excited now because the things that are I think is going to happen with the series is I think they're going to discuss how finally he became a big enough deal that Obama and the administration decided to negotiate with the Taliban
Doing
people.
it for the dollar.
Oh,
I'm just
stop.
kidding.
Don't
No,
say
I'm
that
just
about
kidding.
my
No,
man
but-
Obama.
No,
I love him.
it makes me upset. I guess is like
I want to hear more about the negotiation, and I think
Yeah.
that's
I
where
do
this
too.
is
Yeah.
turning
Yeah.
to.
yeah.
That'd be
Now we know
interesting.
enough about who Bergdahl was. We know enough about his capture.
Right.
And those are all tangible things. It's like, this happened. This attack happened. He
But-
felt this way. But now it's like, I want to know how this whole thing became enough that after the government was so bad and had basically backburnered searching for him for a while because they were so unorganized about it, they were like, not only do we care enough that we're going to give up people that we assumably think are very
it's just
valuable Taliban
for Koenig,
members,
and
etc.
I don't, I think it's just because it is relevant and trending. She did it, but like, I don't know. It's just upsetting when you think about someone who's an actual hero like Edward Snowden, who like did something so noble.
It's controversial.
Well, I mean, yeah, by definition it was like treason or whatever, but like our own government, like he reveals all this information and they don't want to negotiate with him and all sorts of stuff. But then someone who like actively betrayed the country, like
They spend millions.
millions,
It is
and
kinda
then
crazy.
terrorist
That is
lives.
crazy.
Yeah.
If
Yeah.
Koenig like did something like that, I would be like, that's amazing, because that's a great story. That
Should
dude
move
like
on
dropped
to
out of
Edward
high school.
Snowden.
What?
Season 3, Edward
I hope
Snowden.
so, because that's an amazing story that the American people should hear. Like,
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
crazy to think the dude's living in Russia.
There's
like-
probably a lot they could talk about.
Oh,
Somebody email Katie.
Yeah.
You need to get back on Sarah Koenig's good side after you've lambasted her
I
the last time we
know.
talked. You should email
Sorry,
her and be
girl.
like, do Snowden.
Did you email her bad things?
It's-
No, I just talked
She crapped on her on the
just-
podcast.
yeah.
Well,
I don't
No,
know.
I didn't start a
It was a
online.
it was a rough
war
day.
with her, Yeah.
All right,
Yeah.
so hopefully they do more prisoner exchange.
Yeah.
I want to do a mini segue here. There was a case that recently came up that was like,
I'm gonna go like now.
okay, can we do like 5 more?
Can you guys continue without me?
Well, let's just do this. Let's just,
I need to like hightail it out right now.
well, let's literally right now.
Literally right now.
Okay, so let's just be done.
Yeah,
All right.
Let's
You
just
guys
be
can
done.
continue without me.
that was
You're
good.
the
It was
one that
about an
knows
hour.
about that
I
article.
feel like
don't
this is
know
pretty
about
good.
that.
Yeah, it was good.
It
That was
was
about
good.
an hour.
I
Yeah.
think we need a better ending
We're
than
rusty because we haven't met, but that's
Yeah.
okay because
A
that.
little
Well, we
slow
can
getting off
we
the
can do
ground,
some of
but-
this stuff. I want to do the making a
Yeah,
murderer
yeah.
thing next week because that's like good and relevant and interesting.
I promise you I will be 100% caught up with everything next week and we'll bring new ideas to the
Well,
table.
Okay.
Real quick,
Bam.
the Guantanamo Bay thing, because we just talked about exchanging 5 prisoners for Taliban for Bergdahl. Guy in Guantanamo
Boo.
Bay, a decade, they had a guy there that they
Katie's
thought was
leaving.
somebody different. It's like the Stephen Avery, but in Guantanamo Bay. Is that not the worst thing you could possibly think of?
I'm really sad about that.
Can you not think of... Imagine Stephen Avery for the rape thing where he did 18 years by accident or the wrong thing. But instead of putting him in a regular jail, you put him in Guantanamo Bay.
Yay,
Still bring us
cliffhanger.
there.
We should
Thanks
give
for
him a Nobel Peace
listening.
Prize.
All right.
Sorry, that wasn't sarcastic.
It's been real.
Well, he was still a bad
It's been
person.
real. It's been
Oh,
fun.
never mind.
Still
Take it
bad,
back.
but not
I
the
need to
bad
research
guy they
that
were
story
looking
more.
for.
All right. It's been real. It's been fun, but it hasn't been real fun.
That was the second episode of Making a Podcast. We'll be back next week. And we're really going to be back next week.
They lied to their face.
Thanks for listening.
Injustice, such a disgrace. Got to their brains, twisted their brains. Everything's just a sham.
He throws up a peace sign.
Gone. They didn't do it. They didn't do it. No. Come to your senses. Everything's just foolish. Things clearly showed that it was just a joke. Cops were only there just to prod and poke. Not a fair trial, not a fair gain. Whole thing's whack, just a lie and shame. Innocent girl, just gone missing. Puzzle is broken, people upset, just a bad